On June 6, 2005, a 28-year-old desk clerk named Nestor Estrada was working the night shift at the Mercer Hotel in Brooklyn, New York. Around 4 a.m., one of the guests staying in the hotel's $3,000 night suites stormed into the lobby, furious he had been unable to place a call to his wife in Australia, and subsequently threw a phone at Estrada's face, cutting him below his right eye. Police were called and the guest was arrested and ultimately charged with felony assault, and would end up paying Estrada a $100,000 settlement to avoid a civil lawsuit. It's an interesting story, but admittedly, stories of irate and even potentially violent guests and scuffles inside hotels probably aren't that uncommon in a city like New York. What made this particular incident so instantly newsworthy was that the guest in question just happened to be a big-time celebrity, a leading man actor in town to promote his latest film. In fact, when the actor in question was later escorted from the police station where he was being held into a police SUV to take him to Manhattan Criminal Court for sentencing, he just so happened to be wearing a jacket emblazoned with the name of his new movie, a boxing film called Cinderella Man. The story made national and even global headlines, but what was perhaps most surprising about the incident was just how unsurprising it seemed. You see, by this point, the New Zealand actor, despite recent massive success, including a 2001 Oscar win for Best Actor, had also been steadily cultivating a reputation as, well, let's say, difficult. In 1988, he had headbutted a co-star during an argument in the dressing room of a musical he was appearing in Sydney, Australia. In 1999, security footage was shown on Australian TV of him getting into a fight outside a nightclub in Coffs Harbour. In 2002, he verbally berated a television producer who had cut short his acceptance speech for Best Actor at the BAFTA ceremony. Later that same year, a verbal argument turned physical in a London restaurant between the actor and the owner of a New Zealand rugby team. And in 2004, he got into a fight with his stuntman at a party on the set of the same film he was promoting during the phone incident the next year, Cinderella Man. The overwhelming number of similar incidents involving the clearly hot-tempered star made him the target of endless media scrutiny and gossip, as well as an easy punchline for late-night comedy shows. The popular animated series South Park even featured a fictionalized television show hosted by the actor, which saw him traveling the globe specifically so he could beat up people in different countries. That fake show was called Russell Crowe, Fightin' Around the World. So, yes, Russell Crowe has long had a reputation as something of a bad boy, though his undeniable acting talents and willingness to publicly discuss and even sometimes joke about his various scuffles and legal troubles ensured his career was never hurt too much by these events. In fact, maybe it was the very contentious nature of his that made him appear, in the eyes of some, to be the perfect choice to play one of history's most legendary outlaws. Though, to be fair, the exploits of this outlaw tend to veer on the slightly more heroic side of throwing a phone at a hotel employee's face. In fact, this outlaw would never dare dream of assaulting the common man, as it was his life's mission to protect and fight for them, to avenge their mistreatment and unfair taxation at the hands of crooked nobility. And if he used any projectile in his quest to fight tyranny, it would certainly not be a phone, but rather the arrows he could expertly fire from his bow, thanks to his unmatched archery skills. So, alright, maybe the similarities between Crowe and this character aren't that great. Perhaps that explains why he was at first attached to play the character's iconic nemesis, before the film in question underwent one of the most extreme pre-production tinkerings in Hollywood history. But maybe that too was meant to be. Maybe the truth of the matter is that Crowe was always destined to play the legendary heroic outlaw someday. After all, there have simply been so many movies and TV shows about this story. Perhaps every actor will one day have their chance at leading the merry men in a quest to steal from the rich and give to the poor. The year is 2010, and Universal Pictures are ready to reinvent one of cinema's favorite legends in order to launch their next big historical action drama franchise with Robin Hood. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris, wishing you and everyone listening a happy new year in the year of our Lord 2022, where we have some, New Year's resolution. Oh, sorry, not resolutions.
No resolutions here.
No resolutions. We don't believe in that. What we believe in is Robin-lutions.
Robin-lutions indeed. You want to explain to our faithful listeners what Robin-lutions means?
For sure. We are looking at, in the month of January, we love our themes. We like our theme months. And this one, we are looking at Robin Hood from 2010. That'll be this episode, obviously. Well, you clicked it, so here we are. And then the next episode after this, we're going to look at Robin Hood from 2018, question mark?
I believe you're correct, yes.
Okay, good. And so we're going to have a Robin Hood month. Robin my time, some people might say.
Yep, they might indeed. And only after we agreed to do this and kind of got underway did you point out correctly that we actually missed an opportunity for New Year's Russell-lutions, where we could have done this film, 2010's Robin Hood with Russell Crowe, and Master and Commander, another film we have planned.
Yeah.
But I kind of like this one simply because I think Robin Hood is a great character to look at in a theme month because it is a character that Hollywood just cannot seem to let go of, and just the fact that we're looking at a 2010 and a 2018, they didn't even wait 10 years, to try again. So I think that says something. And maybe let's just start there really quick before why don't you give your typical little run through of the film and then I'll come back to that question. So tell us a little bit about 2010's Robin Hood, Chris.
It is directed by Ridley Scott. Written by Brian Helgeland, most famous of Man on Fire, Mystic River, L.A. Confidential, A Knight's Tale, I think he did too. This is based on a story by Ethan Reif and Cyrus Voris. They are writing partners. They actually created Kung Fu Panda. I don't know if you knew that. There's a couple of uncredited writers that we'll get to, but this one, the budget... If you ask any Universal executive, they'll tell you it was $155 million. But actually, it sounds like the movie was $200 million after tax credits.
Yeah, at least. I've seen it up to $237 million in some accounts. Yes.
So this movie made domestically $105 million, and then worldwide a staggering $321 million. So this people lost their jobs over, for sure.
Yeah. This is a rough one. So we'll certainly dissect that a little bit, but what I was going to say a moment ago was I'm just kind of curious, since we are, looking at two Robin Hood films, and I said, Hollywood has a long history with Robin Hood. I always like to do this. Chris, what's your kind of experience with Robin Hood? I mean, is it a character you find yourself naturally interested in? Do you have favorite versions of Robin Hood on screen other than the ones we're looking at? What's your Robin Hood history?
Weirdly, we do movie nights every once in a while. Not weirdly that we do the movie nights, but weirdly enough, there was some hate going on for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the Kevin Costner outing. What would you say, middle of 2020, 21, sorry?
Yeah, there was it happens every once in a while, these little flare-ups of the internet suddenly deciding that movie sucks and that people are dumb for liking it. And that always kind of bothers me, and you hadn't seen it at that point, right?
Correct. So Trev was like, we should watch this tonight. And I watched it. I thought it was really fun. It was really good. More like a classic, blockbuster Hollywood movie,
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it quite a bit. But my favorite Robin Hood version has got to go with the Disney animated Fox one.
The 1973's Robin Hood, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitive to me. But other than that, I've seen Men in Tights, of course. I'm a big Mel Brooks fan. Not a big Carrie Elways fan, but and that movie I think is middle of the road for Mel Brooks anyways. But when it comes to Robin Hood, I'm always aware of him, of course. I'm aware of the Merry Men. I'm aware of the steal from the rich, give to the poor, the outlaw stuff. He's a famous archer. I get it. Maid Marian, yada, yada. But I definitely haven't tuned in for many of the films or cinematic adventures. How about you?
I mean, it's same idea in that, like you, I think we all just grow up knowing Robin Hood and being very, very aware of the story, and probably seeing. I bet you and I have both seen more Robin Hood stuff than we even remember or know, especially when we were younger. But like you, for sure, I grew up loving the Disney one. And then, as I said, I really got into the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves when it came out back then and was always kind of a big proponent of that film. And I mean, yes, Kevin Costner's accent is not the greatest, but whatever. That, as you said, it's a fun blockbuster film. I really do quite enjoy. To me, what I think is kind of still thought of as the Robin Hood film, which is The Adventures of Robin Hood from 1938 with Errol Flynn. If you can kind of get into those older films, still the sword fight sequences in that are amazing, and it's just such a fun, kind of still colorful, really entertaining movie. And I've seen like a couple other ones. There's one, I'm not remembering the name. There's like one with Sean Connery as Robin Hood, like an older Robin Hood that I remember from when I was younger. So I've definitely seen a few, but the ones that to me, like my personal favorites are the Errol Flynn, Kevin Costner, and the Fox. As odd as that sounds to say, but yeah, it's just a character that we all know, and it's just it's so basic, but it's so I get why Hollywood kind of keeps coming back to it. I guess is the point I'm going to make, right? Because we always are going to love a story about stealing from the rich to give to the poor. It's that little bit of comfort in a world where capitalism and an obsession with money has clearly destroyed everything. So, of course, this is a legend that speaks to us. So, yeah, I don't necessarily blame Hollywood for doing it as often as they do. I do think I think they need to do like more tweaks on it. I think, like more kind of stories inspired by Robin Hood instead of just doing Robin Hood again. That would be my. Maybe I should have waited till the end of both episodes before I told Hollywood what to do. but there's my 2 cents, anyways.
Yeah. Well, with saying that, let's talk about the sort of insane pre-production of this film in particular.
Yeah, this one is nuts. I mean, I think this is why I'm really excited to talk about this movie, because, and I know we said this before, but I feel like this is going to trump any time we've previously brought this up, in that this is just one of those movies that, man, if you want to point to something and say, hey, do you want a perfect encapsulation of the stupidity of Hollywood? I think the backstory to this film is like your go-to example. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. And first of all, how many times do you think we say that? Because we should start like a drinking game between this is what's wrong with Hollywood and we don't like shitting on actors.
Yeah, you know what? I'll bring up during the discussion too, but there was another thing I was thinking watching this movie that I started to realize we really need to start keeping track of certain actors and to see which actors are in the most movies that we've covered.
Yes.
Because there's some people already starting to pop up where I'm like, this fucker again, But anyways, yeah, this movie, let's talk about the insane journey of this film to the big screen. Because this actually began life as a spec script from Voris and Reif, the 2 writers you mentioned earlier. They had written a spec script called Nottingham. And everything I've seen about this script, I've seen it kind of described as like CSI Sherwood Forest, right? That was like one kind of log line I saw on it. It was kind of this like very clever, or at least the people who read it have said, this very kind of clever inversion of the typical Robin Hood myth to where this would be where the main character was actually the Sheriff of Nottingham. And you're actually following him as he's this really upstanding, heroic police officer type figure. And Robin Hood actually is a villain. Like, I'm guessing in this version, Robin Hood was probably like just a flat out murderer, and was probably kind of hiding behind this this idea of fighting for the poor. So this is a spec script that they wrote, and it got a little bit of attention, but they shopped it around, and nobody was necessarily like chomping at the bit at that time, right? In 2007, when they kind of created the spec script, primarily because it had a lot of strikes against it, right? It wasn't like an IP that people were. Hollywood was already getting into IP world. And even though Robin Hood is this famous legend, it's not necessarily like a nostalgic-based IP in the same way. Also, it was obviously going to be pretty expensive because it's a epic period piece, and Hollywood is sometimes a little gun-shy with those. No big-name talent was interested at that point, right? So they weren't too sure about it. But then, I guess suddenly, Bryan Singer got interested in it. And once Bryan Singer was interested, it kind of picked up a little bit of heat. And then also John Turteltaub got interested as well. So you got John Turteltaub, the director of National Treasure. Had 2 directors who were kind of interested in this script. So now suddenly there starts to be a bidding war over it, right? Now all of a sudden all these studios want it. And then it fires up even more to when Russell Crowe reads the script and decides, hey, I like this. There's at least elements of it he likes, right?
Yeah.
And he puts his name kind of in the mix. And now it really picks up heat. So New Line Cinema makes an offer for it. Warner Brothers makes an offer for it. But what ultimately helps Universal win out is that they had just done American Gangster with Russell Crowe. And so them and the producer, Brian Grazer, already had like a working relationship with Russell Crowe. So Brian Grazer kind of swoops in and they pay $1 million for this spec script. That's a pretty good spec script sale. $1 million for a spec script based off this concept.
With an extra $500,000 if it gets made.
Right. Yeah.
So like these guys, if you were Reif and Voris, payday.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you're Universal, you've just snagged the script. You have Russell Crowe interested in the script, and you just did American Gangster. And then you also look back and think, well, what is Russell Crowe's signature role? What is he most famous for? Obviously, the wheels start to turn. You say, hey, forget about Bryan Singer. Good call, by the way. Forget about John Turteltaub. We got the guy for this. And so they bring it to Ridley Scott. This seems like Money in the Bank, right? And the reuniting of Ridley Scott and Russell Crowe for what at this point would be the fifth time. They had obviously done Gladiator together, which was a gigantic hit. Then they did A Good Year, American Gangster, and they would have also just around this time been finishing up Body of Lies. So to put them together again, especially in a movie that kind of has echoes of Gladiator, seems like a no-brainer.
And really, it seemed like the perfect fit on paper, right? Like this big, large production, historical epic. Again, you said Russell Crowe, Ridley Scott. Like this is basically, I don't want to say Gladiator 2, but for sure that's what Universal's thinking at this point.
Yeah, and it's like right up to this point, everything about the story seems like, man, that kind of perfect Hollywood story. Right? These two guys write an amazing script. The right actor gets attached. The right director gets attached. What could go wrong? Well, a lot of stuff starts going wrong. So at this point, to hear like them kind of tell it, Voris and Reif, who had been, at this point they had been like meeting with Crowe. They had, had many conversations with him. They were kind of pretty sure they would be kept on because obviously they knew, and anybody would know, you sell a spec script, there's still going to be rewrites, but they thought for sure they'd be a part of those rewrites. However, they say that once Ridley Scott came on, they just stopped being called. And they did not even find out that they had been entirely dropped from the project until they were looking at the trades and saw that there was now a writing assignment open in Hollywood, at Universal in particular, for a project just called Robin Hood, with Ridley Scott and Russell Crowe attached. And so to them, that was like, wait, what? And so suddenly they're just dumped from the project they created. Now, why would that happen? Why would these two writers who created this spec script everyone liked be dropped? Well, here's where it gets very, very weird. Because it turns out that Russell Crowe did like the idea of making a Robin Hood movie, and that's why he kind of convinced, Universal and Brian Grazer to like pursue this for him. But it turns out that neither he nor Ridley Scott were actually too interested in this Nottingham concept. This idea of the Sheriff of Nottingham being the hero and Robin Hood being the villain. In fact, Ridley Scott is on record as saying that he found that original premise to be, as he puts it, fucking ridiculous. And, quote, you'd end up spending 80% of the publicity budget explaining why it was Nottingham and not just Robin Hood, end quote. And so both him and Russell Crowe actually decided they want to try and like kind of start, swapping this back to a little bit more of a traditional kind of take on this. So they just decided to just drop the two original writers from the process. And as you said, they first turned to Brian Helgeland, who's, he's a very acclaimed writer, 8 Mile, LA Confidential. They ask him to come in and try to take the Nottingham script and turn it into a slightly more traditional Robin Hood tale. So he kind of comes in and he makes some slight changes to where he makes it a story about Robin Hood assuming the identity of the Sheriff of Nottingham after seeing him killed in battle. So this is now kind of, it's almost like a dual role kind of thing, right? Where Russell Crowe is going to get to be Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham in one movie.
Which is sort of hilarious, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing that at the time, where during this long, bizarre process, where that kind of got like kind of misreported, I think, to where some people thought this was like supposed to be like a split personality movie, to where Robin Hood was the Sheriff of Nottingham, but it sounds more now looking at it like, no, it's just about him taking the identity. Okay. Well, it doesn't even matter, because he turns in that draft and Scott still is not happy. So they decide to try again, and this time they hire the screenwriter Paul Webb, who at this point was working on Steven Spielberg's Lincoln biopic. And he comes in, and he kind of is given the task of making the tone more serious. So he kind of comes in, does his own rewrite on it, brings it to Crowe and Scott. Scott still not happy with it. Now, at this point...
Hold on. Ridley Scott is just never happy, right?
He's not.
Like, I always thought he was getting surly in his old age now, but, like, he's just always been kind of an angry man, right?
Well, yeah, and in fact, so as the story goes, at this point, there was a Screen Actors Guild strike looming.
Right.
So Universal and Russell Crowe really wanted to pull the trigger on this. Like they're both getting antsy, and Scott keeps turning down these drafts. And apparently, from what I've read, I'm sure you've seen this as well, Chris. This actually really started to put like a damper on the working relationship of Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott. Their like whole like kind of friendship and working partnership started to really crumble and fall apart during this process. Everybody wanted to make the movie, but they just had to wait for for Ridley Scott to finally sign off on another draft.
And this is the first time. This is the first time that Russell Crowe was a co-producer on a joint film with Ridley Scott. So this was the first time that he was actually able to be in the creative side of things and then the business side. And he had a big stake in the film too. You read this, right? He had $20 million on the line plus 20% of the gross.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say this was the first time that Russell Crowe was hard to work with.
Oh yes, right. These guys are so fun at parties, I'm sure.
Yeah, noted Prince, Russell Crowe, right? So this is probably just like a nightmare to be involved with, right? So this draft doesn't, impress Scott enough. They come back to Brian Helgeland. And now he pretty much sounds like he does like this almost entirely like, not, I guess, he's still taking parts of it, but a pretty big rewrite to where now Robin is no longer impersonating the sheriff, but rather this random knight, this like Nottingham knight that dies, and Robin Hood takes his identity, which is essentially the version we get. And then finally, after all of this, all these different writers, all this different stuff happens, they finally have a version that Ridley Scott is happy with, but that means that Universal spent a whopping $6.7 million just on screenwriting for this, for all the various drafts, and hiring these kind of well-known screenwriters to come in. And ultimately, I think what's so funny about that is, again, you start with the spec script called Nottingham, where the main character is the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood is the villain, and you end up with a movie called Robin Hood that's just about Robin Hood as the hero, and the Sheriff of Nottingham is in, 2 scenes maybe? Just an absolutely bonkers, pre-production on this film. And like I said, as we just said, that's just Hollywood in a nutshell right there, right? To take this amazing concept and put all that money into turning it into the same damn thing we've seen so many times before.
Well, don't forget, Trev, you mentioned all those writers, but there was another writer involved, Tom Stoppard. He came out and he rewrote stuff again on top of things during production.
Yeah, so he was like the on-set dialogue polisher, right? Because they said that because this was now a Frankenstein script, the dialogue didn't match, and it was all it didn't make any sense. So he had to be on set actually rewriting the dialogue. Yep, I forgot about that.
So again, for those keeping score at home, ladies and gentlemen, as the cameras rolled, Stoppard was rewriting Helgeland's rewrite of Webb's rewrite of Helgeland's rewrite of Voris and Reif's original script, which started out with the complete inverse of the present concept.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, without giving the goat away about how we feel about the film, I think you can kind of sense some of that in the movie, right?
Yes.
You can kind of, and we'll certainly talk about that. But yeah, that's, so definitely, so we had mentioned how a lot of this comes from Ridley Scott just not being happy, and I know you certainly want to take some time. This is a perfect segue, because maybe it's time to talk about The Man of the Hour. This is our first Ridley Scott film on Failure to Franchise, and he's, I don't want to call him a controversial figure, I guess maybe a little bit nowadays. But I would just like to hear, we were talking about Robin Hood, but what's your opinion on Ridley Scott? I mean, if he's listening, I'm sure he's going to come at us with guns a-blazing, but how do you feel about him?
Ridley Scott is one of our greatest directors.
Yes.
Full stop. Absolutely. 100%. He is also one of the most uneven directors, because he either gives you a masterpiece or some might say a waste of time. It's very strange. He had he had a brother, Tony Scott. And I've had so many discussions with people that, Tony Scott was definitely the lesser director, but he was at least, it was always serviceable. He never really made a bad movie. But I think when you play in the realm of Ridley Scott, it's 50-50. It always feels that way. Again, we named some of his films, right? From going from Gladiator, to Hannibal, and then Black Hawk Down to, A Body of Lies, and then Prometheus to Exodus, Gods and Kings, Alien Covenant. And then he has The Last Duel, which came out 2021, which was I don't want to say awesome, but I think it was like an incredible film. and then also House of Gucci, where everybody sounds like Isami Mario. Like it's just very interesting. You never really know what you're gonna get with Ridley Scott.
Yeah, I do want to swoop in here as one of the few Hannibal defenders. I think that movie's pretty good. You just have to accept it for what it is, which is a crazy Grand Guignol, bizarre horror movie. But anyways, that aside, I don't disagree with what you just said. The only thing I'll come in is because I recently had this discussion again. I feel like every time Ridley Scott gets in the news, this conversation pops up, right? About how, he's so revered, but why do we revere him? Because he's so inconsistent. And for a long time, I actually kind of went along with what you just said about how he's like a 50-50 director. Like me and my other buddies we just kind of accepted that as the norm. And then I was actually, we were talking about that again, and obviously, I guess it's worth saying, his recent like kind of press tour for both Last Duel and House of Gucci has been kind of fascinating. The dude's 84. He just clearly does not give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
And he is just willing to he's just not taking any crap in his interviews. We've seen him insulting, superhero films, being just absolutely rude to reporters who, to be fair, are asking him dumb questions. But whatever, he just doesn't care anymore.
So it's a very realistic film. It looks more realistic than Kingdom of Heaven or Robin Hood, if we're talking about your...
fuck you, thank you very much, fuck you, go fuck yourself, go on.
And so because that was getting so much attention, we were having this conversation again, and I actually brought up the list of his films, and I kind of actually started counting them out, and I would say he's actually much more consistent than 50-50. His filmography is not like an even split of good to bad. He's made way more good films. I think the issue is as you said, when he goes awry, he goes very awry. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem is that most of those have happened in like the last couple decades, So it's in these more recent years, we've had more, The Counselors, or Alien Covenants, and that's where you're like, oh no. But then every time you're ready to like just completely discount him, I remember when I felt like maybe I'm done with Ridley Scott, and then he delivered The Martian, which was awesome, And this keeps happening. I haven't seen The Last Duel yet, but I actually enjoyed House of Gucci for what it was, So it's you never know with him. But as you said, I think he's earned the right to be the cantankerous asshole he is, and he's kind of earned the right to just keep making the movies he wants to make and not ever be completely dismissed or not like be like, oh, he's just done,
Well, and I think what makes him one of our greatest directors is he elicits a response. Like think of where Steven Spielberg's career has gone. Right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen West Side Story, nor do I have any interest, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I mean, typically speaking, like, remember when Spielberg movies were exciting, that they were coming out? And now it's like, it feels like work for hire. They're just so blah and forgettable now. At least Ridley Scott, you can talk about him the way he gets emotional with reporters. We can yell and scream about Ridley Scott, for better or for worse. And I think that makes him interesting, and that makes him the auteur that he is and continues to be. It amazes me that he made House of Gucci and The Last Duel at the same time, and especially at his age. So maybe I was speaking, the 50-50 thing is a little hyperbolic, obviously, but then he does have Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Yeah. Or even like in All the Money in the World, right? Or something like he has these kind of like forgettable films in there as well, Yeah. But he has a really, you just look at his overall, and it's a pretty good run, especially up to, I'd say up to about Body of Lies. It's pretty impeccable with just a couple, little missteps in there. Like you look at like a G.I. Jane and be like, oh no, what was he thinking? But like you said, overall, at the end of the day, he made Alien and he made Blade Runner. So. Yeah. Whatever, right? Like whatever else.
And Gladiator, like holy shit, like, and then that's maybe what it is, man. It's that when he makes something great, it's an absolute masterpiece.
Well, that's what's funny about him too is you can take like he's one of the few ones. Well, I shouldn't say one of the few directors, but you think about his like big films, and they seem like the ones that are most known or kind of come to mind for us probably immediately are the really like kind of high concept, Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator.
Yeah.
But then he can take something like Thelma and Louise, which could have been just a very, very standard kind of, feminist adventure story, like in the hands of a lesser director, and he turns it into like a cultural phenomenon, and it is a great movie. And so he can also take, or something like, I like Matchstick Men a lot. He can take these little kind of like character-based things when he's motivated and make quite the strong film out of it. So he can handle a giant epic, and he can handle something like House of Gucci pretty equally.
And as I said before, I mean, one of those masterpieces and big epics is Gladiator. And
which I think is an important film to talk about here because, I think a lot of people did see Robin Hood as this kind of, maybe unfairly, but whatever, you get it, this kind of spiritual follow-up, right? So because of that, Chris, I wanted to ask you, maybe you and I have talked about this before, but I honestly don't remember. How do you feel about Gladiator? Because I kind of have mixed emotions about it, which I'll get into in a second. But are you just a complete, utter Gladiator head or what?
Well, it's funny that you have already forgotten, but we have had this conversation once before in private and on a certain episode. So I hope you're taking your meds as usual.
Well,
yeah, please don't throw those away. But yeah, Gladiator, I'm all in on that film. I recently got the 4K Blu-ray last year, and I revisited it after probably a good decade. And that movie is like, it kicks ass. I absolutely love Gladiator. I think.
How's that CG tiger look in 4K?
It looks fine. I've never really seen that as a problem. I don't know. I think
no, I don't
fine.
care. I mean, like whatever. I'm not that's just not.
And also, it's not a CG tiger. I think it's just a composite issue, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Okay.
It's still a real tiger. Unbelievable. Your eyes checked now too. Unbelievable.
Well, I guess people can go back and listen to whatever episode we already talked about this, but yes, I like Gladiator a lot. I don't dislike Gladiator. I just think people got a little overly gaga about it at the time, just because Hollywood was so excited to have like another big epic, and I still don't really think it deserved Best Picture that year. But whatever. But
what was it up against? What was it up
well,
against?
the two films that I thought it should have beat it, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but I thought both Traffic and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon were better films that year, more deserving of Best Picture. But whatever. That's a good trio though of Best Picture. You can't really go wrong with any of those, I suppose.
Yeah, I would say I would throw Traffic off, but Crouching Tiger for sure. Yeah, that should have been that was in contention, obviously, but yeah, that would be a hard one. That'd be a hard one.
I don't know, man. Traffic is Topher Grace's masterpiece.
Unbelievable. You don't like Eddie Brock, Topher Grace?
I mean, I do, but now we're gonna get the hate letters.
Oh no. This man likes Spider-Man 3, but he refuses to watch Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I've seen like about 30 minutes of it. I got it. I got the gist of it.
Refuses, as if it's the plague. But yes, Gladiator is awesome. Of course. Yeah. Of course it's awesome. And honestly, I'm looking at the list, and I know we mentioned them all, but dude, Ridley Scott.
Well, here's the thing, what's, and because in the same kind of mindset, or not mindset, in the same kind of realm as like a Robin Hood or Gladiator, what's a better movie than Gladiator is Kingdom of Heaven, as long as you watch the director's cut. Mm-hmm. That is a movie that, like, that's a perfect example. So, this is another thing we're going to talk about with Robin Hood, is that Ridley Scott is kind of known as one of the first directors maybe who really kind of brought the idea of a director's cut to the forefront with his kind of, going back and reworking Blade Runner. And then you also have, of course, his director's cut of Alien. And Kingdom of Heaven, I think, is often pointed to as one of the ultimate examples of a movie that the theatrical cut was not that great. Like, it just didn't work. And then he released this substantially reworked and way longer director's cut that made it into this, like, pure masterpiece. I don't know if you've ever seen that version, Chris, but it is so damn good.
I actually haven't seen the Kingdom of Heaven at all. Theatrical or directors. I've been told since it came out, when did it come out? In 2005. I've been told for now 16 years that I should watch it, and that's my bad. That's my bad.
Yeah.
Now getting back to Robin Hood proper, I guess we mentioned a little bit of Russell Crowe's anger in real life, but I guess what do you think of Russell Crowe, the actor?
I'm a fan. I mean, I definitely, I think, I'm not sure I'd want to hang out with the guy. But I think that he's able to channel that kind of energy, right? There's just something about Russell Crowe where there is this kind of like madness behind his eyes, right? And it works really well in a lot of his movies. And I think he's a very fun, like, on-screen performer. I'm not a fan of everything he does, but I think when he's like locked into something, he's quite captivating on screen. And yes, I mean, like, he is great in Gladiator. He's great in something like The Insider, kind of a more subdued performance. But and I also like kind of later era Russell Crowe, where he's kind of now like leaning into just having fun. I know you and I are both big fans of Unhinged, the just unrepentant, B-movie trash, and just how over the top his performance was in that. So yeah, I would say I'm definitely a fan of Russell Crowe. How about you?
Oh yeah, same here. I get excited when he shows up in films. He doesn't really show up in a lot. He's usually on the poster, but yeah, I mean, we loved him in The Mummy, right? Listeners, if this is your first episode, go back and listen to our Mummy episode from 2017. The movie, not the episode, but he plays Henry Jekyll, Trev's favorite on-screen version of Dr. Jekyll.
I mean, I guess all you could say is, again, he was having fun, clearly, you know?
Do you also like his singing voice?
Okay, you ready for one of the most controversial statements that we're going to make in this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, not only am I a fan of Les Mis, which I know is, like, controversial alone to in the eyes of, like, many musical fans, but I actually don't hate him in that. I agree his singing is bad, but I actually think it, like, suits that character. There's something, like, very amusing to me about his performance in that, which I think works in the movie. So, like, would it probably be better with a better singer? Sure. Do I think he derails the film during those sequences? No. Because I think you're just, like, so, like, wait, what? And but it works for that character.
Yeah. No, Russell Crowe's great. I don't know what else can be said about the guy. He's pretty in the spotlight at all times. So, what about the leading lady, Cate Blanchett? She plays Maid Marian. She actually replaced Sienna Miller. You knew that, eh?
You know, I don't like to. Of course, you and I, we don't like to shit talk actors.
Everybody take your shot.
We know that's the truth. We don't like to talk actors, but boy, talk about an upgrade. You know? But no offense to Sienna Miller, except that is complete offense. But
yeah, respectfully.
But I love Cate Blanchett. She's for a long time been one of my favorite working actresses. I'm constantly blown away by her. She's never given a bad performance.
Never.
You know, you walk in and you know she's in the film. Any other problems the film might have, she's going to deliver. I just find her, just incredibly captivating on screen. You know, beautiful, talented. She's the whole package deal.
I think the movie that really made me a huge fan of her was Blue Jasmine from 2013. I thought she was like remarkable in that movie. And also that classic Hollywood beauty. You know what I mean? Like she usually plays that kind of role anyways, like with the old tacky, like, old Hollywood way of speaking. And, she's got like the hair in most of those films, but she fits like she could be plucked or put into any era.
Well, it's funny. I just recently saw Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley, right? And one of my biggest takeaways from it was just, man, Cate Blanchett was born in the wrong era. Yeah. Because she was just built and designed to be in those like classic film noirs. She's such a perfect femme fatale in that movie. And you just think about the kind of career. I mean, obviously not that she's hurting for a career now. Yeah. But the career she would have had, she would have just gotten every role in all of those like 40s and 50s film noirs back then. Because she's just like, she seems so out of time now. And she seems like she stepped out of that era.
And I guess there's like so much cast in this movie. Yeah. I just got to say the three casting choices for the Merry Men, played by Kevin Durand, Scott Grimes, and Alan Doyle. Those three have quite a bit of personality in the film, which we'll get to. But they were all hired personally by Russell Crowe because he's actually buddies with those three guys. And through the music scene and this and that. Speaking of Russell Crowe being a bad singer, but they all get along, and he wanted it to really feel like there was a long-standing friendship, which is weird because in the movie they're meeting for the first time, but doesn't matter. I wonder what draft he cast them in. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're not meeting it for the first time, but they're definitely like recent acquaintances as part of like, Richard the Lionheart's like Crusades. Yeah.
We also have a young Oscar Isaac in this film. Almost, I don't want to say unrecognizable, but definitely younger. Wow. And that guy is an attractive man.
Have you noticed that? He's pretty good looking, right?
Yeah, he is.
That is a guy that if you would like, you could never take your girlfriend somewhere where Oscar Isaac is. You're gonna lose her. Like, we just regular mortal men stand no chance against Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, it's actually crazy, especially watching like even like Dune this year too, and he's like, first of all, I mean, an incredible talent, of course, but yeah, hide your kids, hide your wife, I guess. Yeah. But he's playing Prince John, so we should say that. Yeah. I don't know. Other than that, I mean, do you want to just jump into the film and we can talk as we go?
Yeah, like I said, there's like 100 more cast members, but we'll bring them up naturally as we talk about the movie. Yep.
I think I have much to tell you about history, about your history. Your father was a visionary.
What did he see?
That kings have a need of their subjects. A dangerous idea.
Rise and rise again until lambs become lions. My father died for this.
What does it mean?
It means never give up.
A king does not bargain for the loyalty that every subject owes him.
In the name of King John, pay or burn.
Many wrongs to be righted in the country of King John. And I pray for a miracle.
That's something that we need to do.
We're common archers, Robin.
The laws of this land enslave people to its king. A king who offers nothing in return.
Robin Longstride, also known as Robin of the Hood.
For the crimes of incitement to cause unrest, I declare him to be an outlaw!
All who shelter him, their lives shall be taken on sight. Nail, please.
It seems we are to share my chamber. I sleep with a dagger. If you so much as move to touch me, I will sever your manhood.
Thanks for the warning.
Robin, your father was a great man. You are your father's son.
As many men as you need.
Are you ready to be who you are?
Yes.
What we ask for
It's liberty.
liberty by law.
Rise and rise again until lambs become lions.
So this is where I give a little bit of a backstory on the film's narrative here. I don't want to, bury the lead here about my feelings on the film, but this is a pretty, whatever I'm going to say next is quite overstuffed, overcomplicated, and extremely bloated. So can you bear with me, Trev, on this one? And
I mean, I already sat through the movie, so.
okay, all right. Following King Richard's death, Archer Robin Longstride, along with Will Scarlet, Alan Adale, and Little John, return to England, where they encounter the dying Sir Robert Locksley, whose party was ambushed by the treacherous Godfrey, who hopes to facilitate a French invasion of England. Robin promises the dying knight he will return his sword to his father, Sir Walter Locksley, in Nottingham. Once the sword is returned, Sir Walter encourages Robin to impersonate his dead son to prevent his land from being confiscated by the crown. Robin also finds himself entangled with Marion, widow to Walter's son. Hoping to stir baronial opposition to weaken Prince John and allow an easy French takeover, Godfrey worms his way into the prince's service and brutally invades towns under the pretext of collecting royal taxes. Can Robin navigate the politics of barons, royals, traitors, and the French? Stay tuned for this riveting tale. Oh, okay, that was a mouthful. that might be the longest one I've ever done.
Boy, doesn't that sound like the Robin Hood legend we all love?
Oh my god. Trev, I've seen this movie before. I saw it in theaters with some friends. This is your first time watch. That rarely happens. So how about you take it from here? What did you think of 2010's Robin Hood?
Okay. I have what you might think is a crazy statement. And I don't know, right now you're probably thinking this could go any number of ways with me saying that. But here's my crazy statement. I think this might be my least favorite movie we've done yet. Now, and I was thinking about this because, I know how weird that sounds because obviously we've watched worse movies. There's no doubt about that. But I was thinking about how, something like, I hated Wild Wild West. That was like one of our first really big debates. Yeah. But that's like kind of a fun, bad movie to me, right? Like I think it's terrible, but there is something so bizarre about it that you kind of look at it like, oh my God, what is this? Like something like Gem and the Holograms also just like total blah. But like the whole entire time watching it, I'm thinking about like, how did this happen? How did this like cartoon turn into this? The problem with this movie, the 2010 Robin Hood, is that for as interesting as all that behind the scenes stuff we just talked about is, none of that translates onto the screen. And I just find this to be such a nothing movie. Like I was just completely glazing over watching this. And as you just said, like it's so overly complicated for no good reason that it kind of like turns your brain off while you're watching it. And then especially when you start kind of comparing this to like the heights of Gladiator, I watched the director's cut, which I don't know. From what I understand, it's like not even much different. It's just kind of almost in name only director's cut. But I can't speak to like the theatrical version, but I just found this so boring and so unengaging, and like just nothing really like captivating about it, except for like one performance which I really liked, and I'll get into that. You probably know who I'm thinking of. It's like clearly the strongest performance, but everything else about it was just nothing. So yeah, that's how I feel. I was not a fan.
Well, I'm gonna say this to you, Trev. I'm gonna say a few things, some key elements to Robin Hood as a character or a mythos. Okay, archery, outlaw, merry men, romance, charm, humor, playfulness, joy. Now, is any of that in this film?
He definitely fires some arrows.
Yes, at least 3 times until he gets a big hammer at the end. Dude, this movie, okay, so when I saw this in theaters, I thought this was junk. Okay, like this was such a disappointing bore fest when I first saw it. And this time, thank God I could pause it and take a break. And go to the washroom and maybe make a sandwich. I shouldn't have even paused it. But this is Batman Begins if you like never get Batman.
Well,
and not get Batman. You don't get things that make Batman or Bruce Wayne characters in their own right. This is Robin Hood in name only. Ridley Scott doesn't give a fuck about Robin Hood.
Fuck you, thank you very much. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself. Go on.
He just wanted to make a big historical epic again. That's all he wanted to do.
It's so weird because, you read about how... I think you're kind of right in that there's this like very famous quote from Ridley Scott in the build-up to this film where he said that he thought the only Robin Hood movie worth a damn was Men in Tights.
Yeah.
So like clearly he didn't care about Robin Hood, but then it's so funny that like he was so like kind of offended by the Nottingham version and then was putting all this work into making it like a more traditional Robin Hood movie and then still just ended up with this, So it's like, well, what? Like at least Nottingham sounded kind of interesting. And that goes to what you were just saying about how this is like Batman Begins if you never get Batman. This movie is like symbolic of one of my least favorite kinds of like screenwriting or storytelling subversions. Because like the Nottingham idea sounds neat, right? I remember years ago, there was this spec script that was floating around that I kept hearing talk about that never got made. I think it was just called, I want to say it was called like Pan, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But that was where the main character was going to be Captain Hook. But Captain Hook was a detective in a city investigating the serial killer who's flying into young children's bedroom windows and murdering them. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? Like you get like whenever people do something like that, it's kind of neat,
Is that not Bryan Singer?
Well, okay. Congrats on that. I'll give you a moment there.
Thank you.
Yeah. But Nottingham sounds like it could have been that, right? Like this like really unique inversion of this tale. But instead, they did one of my least favorite things, which is what I call the what if blank wasn't actually blank, but was blank instead kind of storytelling, right? Where it's just, well, what if Robin Hood wasn't, what if the story wasn't that, but it was this instead? And as you just said, all they do is they turn it into the same like kind of boring knight epic battle movie we've seen so many times before, but not even with like great battle scenes or anything. No. It just sits there. It is. You were totally right when you call it a bore fest.
Yeah. Like me and you both take notes during the movie, right? And we never talk about the movie prior to recording. And like this might be one of the least amount of notes I've taken. And we watched Catwoman.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm right there with you. I do not have much written down for this one, and I was watching the entire movie, eyes glued to the screen. I mean, maybe they're starting to close a little bit during some of it, but I was trying to think what am I supposed to be writing down here? Like, there's nothing going on, Except for like overly complicated stuff.
I was about to say all these like government taxation conversations and who's portraying who and who's doing this. It's nonsense. Can I name some cast list off stuff? Like
Yeah,
I know we I'm not like we weren't joking around when we said there's a million people in this movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're all good too. It's a great cast.
Yeah. And you know what? We'll start from the top. Okay. We'll just say them all. Russell Crowe. Kate Blanchett, Max von Sydow, William Hurt, Mark Strong, Oscar Isaac, Danny Houston, Mark Addy, Matthew McFadyen, Kevin Durand, Scott Grimes, Alan Doyle, Léa Seydoux is in this movie. And also, you know who else is in this movie? Luke Evans. Did you see that Luke Evans was in this movie?
I just saw that before we started recording. I certainly did not clock him. He's listed as playing Sheriff's Thug. Okay.
So, yeah, he has one... Well, okay, so the sheriff is played by Matthew McFadyen. And there's one scene where Luke Evans shows up, gives one line, and leaves. Now, fellow listeners of this podcast and new ones... Three Musketeers. We did that movie. We talked about it. The Mila Jovovich failure. And Matthew McFadyen and Luke Evans share... they're a duo in the Three Musketeers in that movie. So this was a reunion of sorts because their scene is together. And that is hilarious that you didn't see it.
Yeah. Didn't even notice it.
Yeah. Just like this film. Like, it's just... And again, all these people are talented. Everybody. They got the goddamn cinematographer and editor from Gladiator to do this film. They have all the right pieces. And I think it's just... I don't know. What would you say? Is it calculated in the sense that they wanted to make just a big blockbuster again? Like, what did they want? What was the goal here other than obviously money? Why? Was this because of Batman Begins? Is this because The Dark Knight? Is it one of those Dark Knight syndrome movies, would you say?
For sure. I mean, it's definitely that. It's like that. It's that temptation to make everything darker. It's also, this is very much a victim of exactly what our podcast is about. And that is the search for new IP, the search for a new franchise. Because, you think of a film like what Nottingham sounded like to me. And that sounds like a really cool kind of standalone movie. But it's, they said, like, Ridley Scott was kind of looking at this, like, how can we morph this into a Robin Hood movie that could maybe kick off the an ongoing franchise? And in fact, this is one of those movies, you and I love this every time. It has the balls to end with the on-screen text that says, "And so the legend begins." Like, oh, thanks, movie. I sat there 2.5 hours to get to the point where it's finally a Robin Hood movie. Like, fuck off, But this movie is such a victim of all those rewrites, okay? Because you were talking about the overly complicated nature of this. You already mentioned some of this, but I wrote this down in sequence. Chris, can you just indulge me for a moment as I once again encapsulate what happens in this movie? This is about, so as the movie starts, as other Robin Hood movies have done, like the Kevin Costner one, we see that Robin is a knight in the Crusades with King Richard, and they are now returning. They're on their way to return to England. Now, at the same time, the King of France hires Mark Strong's character Godfrey to kill Richard. Right? Okay. Now, what's actually pretty funny, this did make me laugh out loud, is like right after he hires him to do that, the next scene, Richard just gets killed anyway in battle by like some random guy, some like random kid, like shoots him with an arrow and kills him. Okay, so that seems like, well, that's put away now. I guess Godfrey doesn't have to do that, except Godfrey doesn't know that. So Godfrey now attacks a caravan thinking Richard is in it, but he's not, and instead he ends up killing this knight named Locksley. Robin Hood, who and the trio you mentioned is who will become his merry men. They have like left Richard's army at this point. They're kind of deserters trying to get away, but they come upon the caravan after it's been attacked. Robin finds Locksley and agrees to take. Locksley tells him, "Please go to like my dad and tell him I died and give him back my sword or his sword that I took in a battle with me." And Robin agrees, and they also decide to take Richard's crown back to the Prince John, who will now become King of England. But for whatever reason, this is where I start getting very confused. Robin says, well, we can't just go as like who we are. They'll like kill us. They'll say that we killed Richard, which makes no sense to me. So he says, well, let's pose as these knights. I'll go and I'll tell everybody I'm Locksley. So they come to the King of England now, Prince John, and he says, I am Locksley. I'm telling you, here's the crown. Your brother is dead. You are now the king. And Godfrey sees this, and for no reason that I can figure out, I don't know if maybe you can help me with this, Chris. Godfrey decides, I have to kill that guy. But he knows that's not Locksley. He knows it's just some guy saying is, and he's like, he knows too much. But he knows nothing. That just makes no sense. So Godfrey's like, well, I have to kill this guy instead. Now Robin, posing as Locksley still, goes to Locksley's home, but then instantly obviously reveals himself as, I'm not Locksley, I'm this other guy. I'm here to tell you your son's dead. And now the elder Locksley, played by Max von Sydow, says, well, can you pose as him, though, and like, chill with his wife, my daughter-in-law? And that starts, like, this stupid-ass romance, right? Well, and we got to talk about that. But, so this whole, like, pretense of him pretending to be Locksley lasts for about, 15 minutes in the movie? Mm. And then the rest of the movie, every character who matters knows he's just actually Robin Longstride. So I don't even get why that like sequence was in there where he poses as Locksley. Did that confuse you too? Like it just, all of this is like overly complicated. You didn't need to do that. All you needed to do was have Godfrey attack this caravan, Robin come upon it and say, okay, I'm taking the crown back to England, and have that be like the inciting incident. All this other stuff unnecessary. And all I can think is, as you just heard me struggle to encapsulate it, that's just pieces of different screenplays kind of falling into place haphazardly. Yep.
Yeah, it causes your eyes to roll in the back of your head, and it just you kind of just sink into your chair, just letting the movie wash over you because you have no idea what to do anymore.
Yeah.
Not only that, you didn't even mention how Robin is posing as this knight in the town where that knight presumably lived for years, and not a single person is just like, you don't look or sound anything like Locksley. Not a single person says it. Not a single person ruminates on it. There's no whispers in the town being like, oh, that's weird, right? Like, well, I guess we haven't seen him in maybe a decade. No, it's like he left last week and then came back and he looks like Russell Crowe.
Well, I think the Crusades were definitely longer than a week, but your point stands. Well. It is ridiculous. Like,
At least cast the Locksley guy, the real Locksley, cast a guy that looks like Robin or looks like Russell Crowe. Or what you do is you make Russell Crowe that role too, like he was originally going to be a sheriff and Robin. Like, and then comment on it. Be silly. I don't know.
To my point, I didn't mention it because it ultimately doesn't matter. Because by the time you get to like the whole final act, Robin just reveals himself as Robin Longstride to everybody, right? And he goes into battle with like Prince John now, as they understand he's Robin. Also, by the way, yes, I just said he goes into battle with Prince John. Some of our listeners might have been listening to this assuming Prince John is the villain. He's not. This is where it gets really weird too. It actually, in a 2.5-hour movie, I don't know about you, it took me a very long time to realize that Godfrey is the film's central villain. I thought he was just going to kind of be this like underling. And then suddenly, like more than halfway through, the movie just goes, no, he's like the main villain. And in fact, Prince John and Robin are going to work together at the end. And then I was like, well, are they trying to like redeem Prince John? Because it kind of seems like that for a little bit, but then they just have him turn out to be a piece of shit at the end. And ultimately what this is all building to, this is where I really got frustrated. This is one of the few notes I wrote, because obviously this is supposed to be a Robin Hood origin story. So we know, like, what are we trying to get to? We're trying to get to this idea of why is Robin Hood eventually going to be the outlaw who steals from the rich to give to the poor? Why is he going to become the champion of the little man? And this movie could have been all about that, right? It could have been about him coming back and finding himself embroiled in this like power system that is so clearly unfair, but it's not. That's not what this movie's about at all. This is a movie about him trying to protect England from France, and all this stuff with like the sheriff and Godfrey kind of going in and harassing these towns and like demanding them pay more taxes. Robin's not really involved in that. However, what we do eventually find out is that Robin's origin, as it is in this movie, he forgot about his dad. He forgot that he had a dad who didn't like taxes. So I wrote down 2.5 hours to tell us he doesn't like taxes because his dad said they're bad. That's what this movie is. No. And I just couldn't believe I wasted my time for that.
Yeah, you came to me to do this podcast, okay? Yeah, it's a real, I don't even know if it's a real shame. That's not, I don't know what this movie is. Mm-hmm. Again, I can't nail down why it's 2.5 hours, why it's as complicated as it is, why Russell Crowe seems like he is bored out of his mind to be there. Mm-hmm. How did you get Cate Blanchett to seem like she doesn't want to be there. You know, like, how did you even make her fine?
I think she's pretty good in it. I think the problem is that she's having to act against Russell Crowe.
That and they gave her the I am no man moment, you know?
Yeah, I think she does, as I would expect from her, she does the best she can. Sure. And I think she's not the really strong performance I was talking about earlier, but I'd probably give her second place, I'd say. She's doing what she can with this role, and you know, it's but I don't know, there's so much weird stuff with that romance too. So let's talk about that romance really briefly, because I mentioned how I wanted to bring it up.
Sure.
So he comes to this estate, this Loxley estate, and Sir Walter Loxley, played by Max von Sydow, who, by the way, is starting to really ratchet up a good number of these movies for us. So this is why I was telling you before we started recording, I feel like we need to create some kind of chart and consider which actors appear in the most failed franchise films. And I think Max von Sydow is up there. But and you know, Max von Sydow, always good, of course. But he is as the father of this knight who died, says, you know, can you, just to protect my land essentially when I die, to make sure Marion doesn't lose everything, can you pose as her husband and just kind of take that role? And then so, you know, he agrees to this. You know, obviously she's like kind of upset about this, but Robin agrees. The very next scene, he's like treating her like shit. He's he tells her basically to like go make him some dinner. He's like, you know, cracking jokes about how she has to take care of him. It's like, you literally just came and told her husband died, and now you're being mean to her. And then the movie just does that thing where, but then like 2 scenes later, they start liking each other for like no good reason. And by the time you get to like before the final battle, and when he rides off, he says, "I love you, Marion." I was like, oh, come on, movie. Like, where is that coming from? It was just so bizarre. They fall in love because we know Marion and Robin are a couple. There's no other reason for it.
And how do you fall in love with somebody with an accent like that?
If you're trying to build for the future, you must set your foundations strong. The laws of this land enslave people to its king. A king who demands loyalty but offers nothing in return. I have marched from France to Palestine and back. And I know in tyranny lies only failure. You build a country like you build a cathedral, from the ground up. Empower every man, and you will gain strength.
I can't, you know what, as a Prince of Thieves defender, I can't get too like upset about the accent thing. I know Russell Crowe took a lot of heat for that as well, but you know, I can't sit here and be like, well, yeah, that's the problem when I'm going to defend Kevin Costner's performance. So
it's funny because his accent,
I'll at least be consistent here.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'll make fun of it then.
Okay, good, yeah.
It's Irish, Scottish, English, a little bit of just Australian, and then just normal American. It's all over the place, and it's funny because he was in an interview with the BBC when the movie had come out, and one of the reporters mentioned about the accent, and he yelled at the guy and stormed off in true Russell Crowe fashion.
You talk about where he comes from, the location of him, the accent you've given him. There are hints to me of Irish, but what were you thinking of in those terms?
You've got dead ears, mate. You seriously got dead ears if you think that's an Irish accent.
Hints of, I thought. But,
shit bollocks. There are... I'm a little dumbfounded that you could possibly find any Irish in that character. That's kind of ridiculous, but it's your show.
So you're going for... Well, no, just hang. You're going for Northern English.
No, I was going for an Italian. Yeah. Missed it. Anyway.
And finally, you can either answer this or not. I'll just give you the chance because it's out there at the moment. As you know that the suggestion you didn't want to say the famous line in Gladiator in this book that has come out. Okay. Thank you.
I don't get the Irish thing, bro. I don't get it at all.
This is pre or post when he threw the phone?
Oh, this is post.
This is post throwing phone?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I did notice, I don't know if you picked this up, Chris, there is a scene where I believe it is Max von Sydow who calls Russell Crowe a young man. And I was thinking about the moment in The Mummy, which we discussed, where Russell Crowe calls Tom Cruise a young man. So maybe he was just kind of paying that forward, you know, after himself being a clearly old man. I mean, not old man, but Russell Crowe in this is not a young man. And in fact, that's also part of it too. It's like, why didn't they get a younger guy to be this version of Robin Hood?
Well, two things. Anybody looks young up against Max von Sydow. Number one.
True. Yeah.
He looked 80 years old for about 50 years of his life. That's a big problem in the casting is the age. I think this movie maybe works better, with a younger Robin Hood, maybe in his late 20s. Who knows? Because we're gonna comment on that next episode with Robin Hood 2018.
Well, you said I know you're not a huge fan of Trevor rewrites the movies, but what about Trevor recasts the movies? Because you just mentioned that this would be better with like maybe a younger Robin. You know what would make this movie work? You know who maybe should have played Robin Hood? Oscar Isaac. So maybe now is the time to talk about, are you with me that this is the performance? If there's like anything that kind of carries you through this film, it's waiting for Oscar Isaac to come back on screen. Because he is a lot of fun as Prince John in this.
Take up your lawful wife and save England.
My lawful wife is as barren as a brick. Is that truly the wife you want for me? You, who honored your husband with 8 children, so that even now, when death has taken the rest, you have a king and the runt of the litter to call you mother.
Better the bastard of a servant girl than bed the niece of England's jealous enemy.
Oh, bed her and wed her, mother.
Yeah, he plays this sleazeball, this like self-absorbed, bratty kid, would-be king. And he's a lot of fun, and especially like Léa Seydoux playing his girlfriend / queen by the time the movie progresses. They are really good together. There's a lot of chemistry there. You know what cast her as Maid Marian? Now we got a movie.
It's funny because you might look at this and say, well, yeah, of course Oscar Isaac is good. We always know he is. But this was actually pretty early on in his career. I mean, this is a year before Sucker Punch and Drive. So this is really early Oscar Isaac. And I don't know. I feel like I vaguely remember some talk at the time about the guy who plays Prince John is pretty good. But I think just because the movie was such a turd on arrival that his kind of charisma in this got lost. But it's kind of cool to go back at this and see how, even in a movie like this where everyone else kind of seems like they're wandering around, not sure what's going on, he obviously found his like lane, locked into it, and ends up delivering the movie's best performance.
Yeah, and especially surrounded by such dour and just gloomy.
Yeah, he's
junk.
like the only one who realizes he's in a Robin Hood movie, right? That's the you're exactly right. Like, I don't want a Robin Hood movie to be this dark and serious. It's not to say that they don't try to put there are some jokes and there's some humor, but overall, this is like an attempt to gladiatorize Robin Hood, and it's just not working.
Down to Russell Crowe's look. Like, I guess there was talk that he was going to have longer hair in the movie. They tested wigs out, and then right before filming, he shaves his head and grows his facial hair just like Maximus. It's nonsense.
And he got like back into shape for this, which I mean, more power to him. I read about how there was like concerns about that, and to prove he could do it, he kind of went on this like extreme diet and workout regime, and this is like the best shape he'd been in a long time. But then you're just like, all that for this, know? But yeah.
Even the Merry Men, like I know, like they have some personality. I guess it's pretty one note. I like Kevin Durand a lot. Lost fans will know him as Keamy, right? Keamy from season 5 and 6, or just 5. Yeah, Kevin Durand is awesome. When he shows up in movies, I'm always a fan of seeing him, and he is really fun as Little John. I like Mark Addy as Friar Tuck. Mark Addy's a Game of Thrones alum. He took over the mantle as Fred Flintstone from John Goodman in Viva Rock Vegas.
Of course, we all remember him from.
Yes.
I mean, I like Scott Grimes. I'm a Scott Grimes fan. He was like the kid in the first couple Critters movies, but I really like him from. I was a big ER fan, and he played Archie Morris on there. Like a great, like kind of like sleazeball doctor who actually over the course of the show had a great kind of character redemption arc. So yeah, I'm a fan of him as well, and I think he's, like I said, he's kind of fun as Will Scarlet. I don't know, but
and then Alan Doyle, he's the lead singer of Great Big Sea. As a Canadian, this is going to sound blasphemous, but I can't stand that band. I am
well,
not.
As an American, I've never heard of them.
Yeah,
so.
well, there you go. Well, so he's part of a big Canadian band. But their scenes are few and far between too. It's weird because like Robin is so like he spends so much time away from them. It doesn't really make much sense that there's really no sense of chemistry or friendship. Like it goes back to what I said. They were all cast because Crowe was like, I want everybody to sound like they've been friends for decades. And in this movie, it just doesn't feel like that at all. They don't even get time to shine. And then it feels so forced when they do have little moments together. They seem like strangers. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand why the movie doesn't just race right into... This movie doesn't race into anything. It takes too long for everything. But I don't understand why you don't just remove the entire Godfrey and the French trying to come over and take over England element and just go right into, once like Robin and the Merry Men come back to England, just have Prince John turn into the douchebag we all know he's going to halfway through the movie and just start setting up the Robin Hood we all know. To do this whole like head fake where they work with Prince John to fight off the French, and now we realize that, the outstanding story here is that Prince John doesn't like Robin because he upstaged him in battle, and he's jealous of how the people, how France surrendered to Robin and not to him. Like, who gives a shit? Like, just have it be the Robin Hood story we know, and like, don't bother with all this other stuff. I'm not here to see a medieval combat film. I'm here to watch Robin Hood and his merry men drive Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham crazy. And poor Matthew McFadyen. Yeah. I wonder, I wonder if when he signed on, he knew that he was signing on to play a part that was originally the main character of this film, and he has 5 lines in this, maybe.
Little sidebar, casting wise, fun fact: Oscar Isaac is in Dune, playing the same character that William Hurt played in the original Dune, and they're in this movie together.
This is why I like doing a podcast with you. It's like doing a podcast with a living version of IMDb trivia.
First of all, if you go to that page, there's 7 connections people have made, and the cast is of 55 people. So of course you're gonna get some crossovers.
By the way, did you know that King Richard the Lionheart in this is played by Danny Huston? Danny Huston played the main vampire in 30 Days a Night, and of course, Russell Crowe was in The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise, almost played Van Helsing, who, of course, is a big enemy of vampires. How do you like that? Does that one work for you?
That one was very good. I like that one a lot.
Okay. I was trying to be a bullshitter, Ash, but all right.
Max von Sydow seems like he is a living vampire.
Not anymore. Rest in peace.
Well, he's a living dead now. Okay.
Wait, why did I go to... I realize now, just like this movie, I overly complicated things. I could have just said Luke Evans played Dracula. But again, I forgot Luke Evans was in the damn thing.
Also, I think listeners, we're struggling to actually talk about this movie.
I'm losing my mind doing this episode because, as you said, I did not take down many notes. I watched this movie a few days ago. It's definitely leaving my mind already. And it's just that's just the thing. It's like the second this movie ends, I know it says, and so the legend begins, but you just go, and so my interest is over. It's just there's nothing about it that sticks with you.
I mean, should we just call an audible? Should we just go into do you want more of these, Trev?
No, I definitely don't. This is one where 100% understand why this failed. So the thing is, this is one of those kind of movies that can actually just make you angry as you watch it. Because like you said, all the pieces seem to be there, other than a script that is clearly just so effed by the time they get to this point. But in terms of the right cast, this incredible collaboration between actor and director that we know has borne fruit before, a story that has already resulted in so many classic and really fun films, and you sit down and you just cannot believe how quickly it goes awry, and then how long you have to sit through it continuing to go awry. Like that's why I think this is my least favorite movie we've done. It's just it's boring and aggravating at the same time.
And it really doesn't even, this is going to be maybe a little bit of a exaggeration, but it doesn't even really come to life until the last 2 minutes of a 2 hour and 20-minute movie. It gets to the point that Robin is an outlaw. The sheriff is looking for him. He shoots an arrow into his wanted poster or whatever. And then that's the movie.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean, right? Like you get what you want just at that very end. But if they were looking at this as like a necessary prequel to a franchise, I just can't agree, because nothing that happens in this film feels like it's important enough to where the next movie, if they made it, would feel defined by this. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You wouldn't need to know any of this stuff to pick up the next movie and just be like, hey, there's this guy that lives in the woods who's trying to screw with this king because he's overly taxing the people. We've understood that concept for hundreds of years now without a 2.5-hour prequel telling us about how they once went into battle together, and for a while he was posing like this other knight, and he only met Marion because it was like this weird deal where he was going to fake a marriage to her to protect her land. Like, what is all this? I don't need it. So yeah, don't spend 2.5 hours giving me 30 seconds, because you're right that the only moment that feels like a Robin Hood film is the brief scene where the Sheriff of Nottingham nails up like the warrant for Robin Hood's arrest, and the arrow fires out of the forest into the warrant. Like then you're like, oh, I'm actually watching a Robin Hood movie. Oh, end credits. Never mind. Like that's yeah. Ugh. Ugh.
The sound of that arrow hitting the tree woke the audience up and
told them it was time to leave the theater.
Yeah, and they lost that much. I can't believe I've seen this movie twice.
Yeah, that's more power to you, man.
I put 5 hours into this movie plus research. Plus talking to your ass. Enough.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just call it here, Trev. The movie sucks. It's a waste of everybody's time and money. And what's on the docket for the next New Year Robin-lutions?
Well, that is 2018's Robin Hood, a film that I really don't know very much about. I just really, that's one where I know it just kind of came and went. I haven't really looked into anything yet. I can only hope it has like 75% less screenwriters involved, perhaps. But yeah, after seeing this one now, I have to admit, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little trepidatious about going into another Robin Hood movie. But who knows? Could it be this bad? That's the question now. Could it possibly be this bad? I'm going to make a bold claim and say, I think the next one will be better.
I think you're right. I have not seen that movie. I do remember trailers and stuff. At least it might have some energy or life to it.
Yeah, which this one just does not.
No. Well, listeners, stay tuned. Follow us at F2FPod. That's at F2, the number 2 FPod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. Hopefully you enjoyed our ramblings of this mess of a movie, and give us a star rating. Also, just join the tribe, hit the subscribe, and yeah.
Ridley Scott, if you're listening, please don't hurt us.
Fuck you, thank you very much. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself. Go on. So, go on.
Wait, should we just say anything about the score?
No. That one little horn thing.